What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassity. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares and set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who survived their own nightmare. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. All right, welcome back, Nightmare Success In and Out listeners. This is where you come for what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? Folks, don't forget to follow, subscribe, share this thing out, like it up. It helps the show. Comment. It's all good. It really does help the show. So who are we talking to today? Well, I've got Tara Lenich, and I was just telling her, I've been looking forward to this for a lot of reasons. She's a really cool lady, but the story is that she was a big time prosecutor in New York and handled big cases and was known. And then she gets wrapped up in this case and she ends up doing almost a year in federal prison. I find it fascinating when somebody lives that world, because it's one thing to get wrapped up in the whole thing in the criminal legal system and then go to prison. It's a whole nother thing if you were a prosecutor and you were living in that world and people were being sent away and then you go in that world. I just think it's incredible. She has come out and I love this too. She's taken all of the things that she knows, being a criminal defense attorney or a prosecutor, being someone who has been in that world, and also having a bad experience of people who were trying to help her that she was paying when she was going in or while she was in. And now she's created Liberty Advisors, which she now walks families through all the things they need to know and the emotions that they're feeling and what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And really walks them through the process of when they get indicted until they come home. So I love everything about that. I can't wait to get into it. Before we do, I want to recognize our show sponsor, Auto Plaza Direct. You know, who likes spending a couple of weekends walking car lots, looking for a car, and then you spend 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car. It's kind of like a root canal appointment. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle getting a car. It's called Auto Plaza Direct. They're your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price. They also offer warranties and financing. It's all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge. The new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Tara, welcome in. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, Brent.
Well, we just had a great conversation. I think I say this on every show. I should be hitting the record button when we're sharing these stories back and forth. But I have really been looking forward to this, Tara. The other night, we are both members of the White Collar Support Group, and Tara was sharing parts of her story. And I thought, gosh, I have got to reach out to her and see if she would get on and share her story to the overall audience. And the great thing about this show is that we've got an overall audience and we go into 1,100 prisons in the United States. So I think the story goes both ways, just like your story is. Tara, take us back a little bit before you are Liberty Advisors and you go and you're a prosecutor and all this. Where'd you grow up? Mom, Dad, what was life like as little Tara?
Well, I grew up in Worcester, Massachusetts, and when I was about 12, we moved to Connecticut. So that was a big culture shock, going from, inner city Worcester to 2-acre zoning and no streetlights. So I grew up playing tennis and soccer, volunteering with the Key Club. I think that I did community service. I probably did 50 hours a month, even all through high school. Community service was always big in my family. And then I went to college in Maine, and I spent 2 years in DC lobbying and working for a law firm. And then I went to law school for 3 years in Atlanta.
Well, I want to back up on the deal with the community service. You said that was something in your family, because that's not really normal. I mean, for a kid, a teenager doesn't usually just say, well, you know what? It's Saturday morning. I think I'll do some community service. How, where does that, was your mom and dad like, in the community doing that and you
They
got
did
into that?
some, they did some, and they always encouraged me to be involved in the community. We did in Worcester before we moved to Wilton. And I think once we moved to Wilton, it was Connecticut. It was just, it's different because the needs are different. And so what we were necessarily doing at working in a soup kitchen in Worcester, Mass didn't translate to Wilton, Connecticut. It was different needs. And so I joined Key Club, which is a national organization in high school, and I also 4 years served, as the secretary, treasurer, vice president, and president of
Yeah.
Key Club. I just liked helping people and finding the need for it. It's just something I've always done, and in Connecticut we did it through the Rotary Club. We would join them. We would go volunteer at animal shelters. There the soup kitchens in Norwalk that we would go
Mm.
to. We would do just not townwide cleanup days where you would clean up, trash, all sorts of different things. I just think it was something different other than just playing sports
Well,
and of
playing
course going to
sports
school.
was playing sports something that was a big part of your life? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a huge part of, Connecticut where I lived. Was lacrosse was huge. I didn't play lacrosse as a kid because I had grown up, in Massachusetts, but I played soccer and tennis, and it was very everyone was very driven to succeed, whether academically but also in sports. And a lot of kids from high school got full scholarships to college based on sports. So, yeah,
And
I played tennis.
and I think my three daughters played tennis, and I miss it because I was, you know, that's one of those things. It's not a team sport. So when you're watching your kids out there, they're playing 2, 3 sets or whatever it is, and my kids played in that Missouri Valley, which was 5 states, and we would go and kind of got to know everybody. But it's very competitive, very very competitive. But I think that also is something that gets in your bloodline to your bloodstream to be competitive, and not get stopped with obstacles. I think sports, is a good training ground for that next step of life's not easy. And I also think it's interesting, Tara, that this community service thing almost comes like full circle around to Liberty Advisors of what you're doing, helping people.
I know it's crazy,
I
but
mean,
it's true.
would you have ever have thought? And
No.
so when you got into college, were you thinking attorney? I'm going to be in law. I mean, was that something that had already been planned out or was part of your development of what I'm going to do next?
Yeah, I think I always thought I would go to law school. I loved the idea of becoming a veterinarian, but I was terrible at biology and
Me
chemistry,
too.
so that's out. So okay, what are you gonna do next? Um, but my parents are like, you argue with anyone, you should be a lawyer. you know, you always have to have the last word. So I think it just worked with my skill set too. I'm very much like a crisis management in the mode of things. I'm pretty intense at most things I do, and I think that also was true with sports. And I agree with you, like sports really does help you like focus your brain in a different way in your body. um and so yeah, I think I always just knew I was going to go to law school. I was a government major, at
Yeah.
school. Those were my favorite classes, although I did really enjoy my English classes as well.
Yeah. I kind of did. I was political science and I liked English. Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think of law school?
It wasn't very much. I mean, it was fun hanging out
Yeah.
with new people, but it was, it was a very book heavy. They don't, you don't study for the bar, right? So you just go and you take all these theory classes. And I felt it was the same in college, is that I enjoy classes that are the smaller size. So second and third year of law school was better, and I would say the same thing about college. The junior and senior year are better because it's smaller, more intimate classes. Those big classes with 100, 150 people, I don't get much out of them. I don't do as well because I kind of lose focus.
Yeah.
And
Just drift off. Yeah.
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 Um, but I really enjoyed my seminars and like the classes. I took a class, actually, Crime in America, where we visited all the prisons in Georgia, Atlanta, like county jails,
Oh, wow.
federal prison, state prison. I know. So
Wow.
foreboding.
Wow. Well, even, I mean, being able to go into a federal prison, they don't, state prisons, they allow people to go in and out and do all that, but federal prison is more, you just don't walk into federal prisons. It's very, you try to find pictures of the inside of federal prisons. It's really tough. I mean, I remember trying to look, what does the bathroom look like in a federal prison? Where am I going to be sleeping? You can't hardly find it.
No, it is impossible. I thought the same thing about Danbury. I'm like, what does it even look like?
Yeah. Right. Right. So you get out of law school, and then what was it? What was your step?
So I got out of law school. I took the bar. I wasn't sure exactly. I had applied to do a couple different things, but I really wanted to do criminal law. I had interned at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I really liked criminal law. So I knew that's kind of where I wanted to be, but I wasn't sure really of what the options are. I went to school down south, so moving back northeast, I knew I wanted to move home to the northeast, but I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I ended up applying to the DA's office in Brooklyn and Queens, and I got a phone call from Brooklyn, and started working there in July 2005. I
Wow.
had never been to Brooklyn until I started that
Well,
job.
what did you think, Tara? Because how old would you have been?
So I was mid 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you thought, here I am. I'm at the Brooklyn office. I'm here
Yeah,
I
it
am, the
was a lot.
DA.
Yeah. It's a lot because you don't study New York law in law school,
Right.
and your only experience with New York law is taking the New York bar examination, which you don't remember, 9/10 of what you studied, or at least I didn't. And so it was a real intense learning curve when you get there, just trying to learn the penal law and know what the crimes are and put the elements together of the crimes, and then what basically happens when you get arrested. How do you explain that to the judge? How do you look at a bail argument? How do you make a bail argument? And those are real the basics. So you spend time in you did then in the DA's office, in that early case assessment bureau, where you really learn how to assess a case and learn what charges go with what actions.
So Tara, I mean, I like in that kind of situation, like how does someone, because you became a big deal. I mean, I'm not just telling you that. I mean, you were a big deal. You became somebody that people talked about, that you were a known prosecutor. How does someone move up like that? Is it one big case and then they're like talking about Tara, or is it just a lot of grinding into the
It's a
next
lot of
position?
grinding. It's a lot of grinding. And also it's different opportunities, um, I think, are what you make of it. And I do think that's true with everything in life. And so I, very early in the office, got sent to the Narcotics Bureau. And so I learned about long-term investigations and writing search warrants and probable cause and that whole gambit. And then I went to a trial bureau and learned to, do trial cases, worked my way up there, became actually a boss first in the trial bureau of misdemeanor cases. And so I had about 10 to 15 assistants at any one time underneath me that were all doing misdemeanor trials and cases. And then I moved back to narcotics a couple of years later and became a boss in narcotics. And then started doing long-term investigations in narcotics, but as a boss. And I worked with some other great bosses who really wanted to expand the program in the DA's office and were open to trying new things. And we started, doing, I would say, like, narcotics trafficking cases versus like the dime bag buy and bust cases on the side of the street, and working closely with the police department. And then a new DA was elected, and he created a new unit called the Violent Crime, Enterprise Unit. And so we really then took on gangs, guns, and drugs. And so we did firearms trafficking, narcotics trafficking, gang cases. And I worked my way up to doing all of the special investigations for that unit.
Yeah, it's
So it
so
really was a long
fascinating.
process. Yeah, it was over a decade. So
It was over a decade, and I was curious on reading all that about you, was because a lot of times when somebody becomes that known, they they jump the fence and become the criminal defense attorney. Did you ever think that that was where you were going to jump to, or you were just loving that part of what you knew, how you did it, and you were getting better at it?
I didn't think I would jump to becoming a criminal defense attorney. I loved being a prosecutor. I loved the investigation part of it. That was really fascinating to me and challenging. And I loved the fast pace of it. You know,
Yeah,
that was
there's a lot
something
of movies about it.
yeah, that
I
was
mean,
something I really thrived on.
I mean, there's a lot that goes on. I mean, there's movie after movie of the stuff that you were doing, and then the investigations and the people and the undercover people and the informants and the detectives and everything that goes on with it. So I'm
Yeah.
sure there was a lot for you to thrive on in that world.
Yeah, I think if anything, I thought I would go to like an investigations firm and, you know, like a security firm where they do long, you know, investigations. That side of it
Yeah.
was I thought would be my next step. But not just to becoming a defense attorney. If I did go to defense, I would have seen myself more in like a mid-sized to big firm. You know, I could never just hang my hat out and shingle out. And I think all God bless the people that do that, but that's, you know, that's so much pressure and so much work and
Yeah.
really coming from the DA's office where it was a very um collegial environment in some ways where you could bounce ideas off of people. I mean, I think I would have been terrified if you told me I had to go try a case by myself on the defense side.
Well, let's jump into your world is one that people that are in your world, working your way up to 10 years of this, um, you have success. And as we all know, success can also lead to a nightmare. How does it happen? When does it happen? And when does lead us through it?
I mean, I think I was just under so much pressure, both externally and internally, um, that I couldn't come up for air. I couldn't breathe. I was just grinding myself into um, a place of basically no return. And I didn't ask for help, you know, and I think that's one of the key takeaways if anyone's in one of these situations is like ask for help, go to people. I did somewhat, you know, and I at first I was like, but I did ask for help, but I didn't scream it from the rooftops, right? I needed to say to people like, this is too much. These are the reasons it's too much, and these are also all the other issues that are going on, and someone needs to help. I think when you're stuck in that environment and you're a people pleaser, which I am, and you are like, I can handle more, I can handle it, just keep dumping on me and dumping on me, and I'll do it and I'll do it and I'll do it. Well, the fact of the matter is, you can't do it, right? Nobody can do that. At some point, everybody is going to break, and I broke, you know, and that was, you know, I think part of it was a shock to most people is everyone just thought, oh, she just does everything, right? Oh, you know, like she doesn't complain. She doesn't, we had no idea anything was going on. Well, you didn't have any idea because I kept everything internalized, right? And I
Which would
just
have been a
wanted,
lot. And
yeah.
that had to be a lot to deal with, Tara, just because of who you were, what you were doing, and people thinking that you were Wonder Woman. When this all erupts, how are you dealing with it?
I actually felt relief. You know,
Relief.
I have to say that was my first emotion. I actually was like, whew, take a deep breath. And it's the craziest thing to say. I mean, I still hear myself say it. I'm like, and I still feel it. I can still feel that deep breath sigh when I got arrested. It was like,
Okay,
okay,
on getting arrested, because I didn't get arrested like, I've interviewed so many people where, they bring the people to the home and they 5 o'clock in the morning. Were you surprised? Was it taken by surprise, or how did this come to you?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, obviously, I knew I was doing something that I shouldn't be doing and that was illegal. So there's that. But I wasn't. I don't think I was treated like we know a bunch of other people were either with people come to the house. You know, I was in my office. I went to work. They brought me upstairs. They said, this is the issue. And I was like, okay, can I call an attorney? You know, can I call my family? That was really, it was I don't want to say pleasant because obviously it's never pleasant, but it was not the same that a lot of people experience with like guns drawn on their family in the middle of, the middle of the night or early morning. I know I wrote search warrants. I know what, like and arrest warrants. So I understand that. But, um, I called some people, I got an attorney, and it was a state case at that point too. So these are state charges. It was different. I was arraigned. Unfortunately, there was someone in the audience at the arraignment that decided to like live stream it on Facebook. I'm like,
Mm.
um,
I was
but so
curious, Tara, how, because the way I understood it, it was a forging of the judge's signature for a wiretap. Why did that turn into a federal when it started as a state?
that's a good question. um, well, it was a state case, so it was going to be prosecuted by a different borough. And then I was notified, or my attorney was notified, that the feds were looking at the case and they were going to take the case. And I will tell you, when I got that phone call, then I almost threw up. That was a different, to me, that's a very different situation having worked in, as a prosecutor, and I know the difference. So to me, I was like, oh my God, what do you mean they're taking the case? Like we have a disposition worked out where I'm all good. Like I know how this is going to end. And so then it was definitely fear of the unknown, but immediately my first thing was prison. Okay, this equals prison.
Yeah. Because it turned
And
federal.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I know what those cases are like and I know what it takes to fight them. And I know the seriousness, and I will say it's the amount of time is so different. How cases are treated is so different. And so for me, that was like the oh my God moment. So
What did your people around you that you were close to, how, how did, how did that all evolve?
I mean, I don't think anyone that was close to me, and this is part of why I do what I do now, is I don't think anyone close to me understood the difference as much as I did. I mean, meaning my friends and immediate family, and even some of my close friends that had worked at the DA's office with me, because unless you've done those types of criminal cases and understand the difference of how seriously the feds take it, yes, it's a big, scary word, the feds have it, but knowing in detail what they're going to do with the case, I don't think anyone else was afraid right away until they saw how afraid I was. And then they were like, oh no, okay, this is a problem. um,
How long did the process take? So they bring you in, they say, hey, we've got you in this wiretap thing. Um, Here's the people that are involved. Uh, was you and your attorney thinking that you would fight this and go to trial, or was it a mitigation situation where
it
you?
was immediate mitigation.
Okay.
I first of all, I knew what the evidence was against me. So, I know how to evaluate a case. And so I was like, okay, good. When do I plead guilty? Let's go. Like, let's just get this done.
Yeah.
You know, Immediately. I can do a sentencing guidelines calculation, general, like I know the steps of what it's going to take. And so I was like, the sooner that I get this started is the sooner I get it finished.
How long did that take when you started that?
Still took a while. Still took about 2 years.
It took 2 years you had to live
Hmm.
through to
Yeah.
get that to the mitigation point. Um, when it finally came down to you that you had a plea deal, you knew you were going to go to prison. I always think this is really interesting for somebody who is on that other side. What were your thoughts on that? Like what? Because I asked you before we got started, were you worried about your safety? Did they know that you were who you were? Because a lot of times people in prison know a whole lot more than you think they do. And I shared with you, people knew who I was because it was on the news. So I hoped that they let me kind of live my world and get to know me before they made a decision about what was on the news. What happens, Tara, in your mind when
I mean,
what are
I
you
was
thinking?
nervous. Yeah, I hired a prison consultant, and I wanted to know exactly that. Like, how is it going to be? At the same time, I always knew like if other people in prison don't hold it against me, I I can get along with people. I'll be fine there, me personally. I had two fears. Am I going to get beat up? Am I going to get raped? Right?
We
That's
both
like,
said the same thing.
that's all I wanted answered. Like, can you just tell me that?
Get that out of
And
the way.
yeah,
Oh,
and pretty much the person I spoke to was like laughing at me, like, of course you're going to be fine. And I was like, okay, well, that's a good response. All right, then I'll be okay.
yeah.
Um, and I had a really weird experience. I got originally designated to West Virginia, Alderson, and then I showed up at West Virginia. And when I got there with my best friend, they were like, "Oh no, you were designated months ago to go to Danbury instead." And I was like, "What?"
Oh,
And they said, "Oh
Tara.
yeah, you have like till 2 p.m. to get there." And I'm
I
like,
mean,
"I'm in
that
West
is a
Virginia."
overall nightmare all in itself.
It was a total nightmare. I was like, "Oh my God, a federal warrant's going
How
to
how
issue for
long?
my
How far
arrest."
away was West Virginia to the Danbury?
I mean, 16 hours probably driving. It
Good
took like planes,
Lord.
trains, and automobiles to get there. I mean, the West Virginia women's prison is out in the middle of
I
nowhere,
mean,
and
did you get
so
the letter that said you were going to? Because I got the letter that said, Leavenworth, and I was like, oh man, I've heard of Leavenworth. It's in the movies. But did you got the letter that said that, and you showed up?
well, my prison consultant got the
Oh,
letter
oh,
with my attorney. So this is one of my big things,
there you go. Okay,
the original letter, and then I guess got another letter and never told anyone that I had been designated, and
Tara,
the
that's
desig.
awful.
I know, and I
I
was
mean,
like,
it's awful because you have so much stress and unknowns and everything that's going on. And your immediate thing is, I'm going to get out of the car here. I'm going to put on my big boy pants and act like I know that I can handle this. And then they say, oh, by the way, you're not even supposed to be here.
exactly. And you're like standing with your like baggie of approved
Uh,
items, right? Of like your license, and I'm talking to the women coming out, like, how's it gonna be? And the lady's like, I checked. The guard says to me, okay, I checked again. You're definitely not on our list. I was like, okay.
Tara, I've done 175 interviews. I've never had anybody say that they just say, hey, by the way, you're not supposed to be here. You're up the street 16 hours.
Can I go home then?
Let's take a break there because when we get back, I want to talk about how it was walking into that prison, how your strategies that you used and more or less, what life was like for Tara walking in. Before we do that, a lot of people don't like how they show up online. Many people think that there's no hope when it comes to managing your reputation online. Well, there is hope. It's called Discoverability Company, and they can help you. Whether you're building a reputation from scratch, repairing your search results from a negative news story, Discoverability can also help you on how you're portrayed on popular AI services like ChatGPT. To learn more, visit Discoverability Company. It's discoverability.co. They're even launching a do-it-yourself option, a course for individuals who want to take on their search results on their own budget and speed. Listeners of Nightmare Success can take $100 off the DIY SEO course with coupon code Nightmare Success. And Nightmare Success podcast is sponsored by the White Collar Support Group. It's the world's first support group devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice system. I'm a member of the White Collar Support Group, and I can tell you that it is a bunch of people who help each other through the criminal justice journey for free. Whether you're just starting your journey or you've made it through to the other side, this is great space for you. You can join us on Zoom Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. For more information, go to prisonist.org. That's prisonist.org. Okay, Tara. So you get this crazy, crazy thing of you got 16 hours to make it to another prison. You finally get there and planes, trains, automobiles. Now what?
So I get to Danbury. It's a very small facility in the scheme of things, and I walk into R&D, and they had because this is my luck, a tornado the night before in
Good Lord.
Connecticut. So it was kind of in disarray. People were, guards that were off shift were coming in. Everyone kind of was congregating to see the damage to the facilities. And so I just sat with them for about 6 hours, doing nothing but talking, and which was fine with me. Then I got fine. I don't need to go anywhere. I'm
All
good.
right,
I'll
I'm
just
fine
sit in
just
the
here, right
lobby.
here.
Yeah. So I went in and I had talked to people about, what do I say I do. And they're like, well, you have to say you're an attorney because people are going to find out anyways. Just keep it vague, but don't offer obviously legal advice when you get in about something. I'm
Right.
like, well, that's good because I don't know anything about wills and trusts. So, um, so I went in, I just said I was an attorney. I was very lucky. I had really a great bunkie in the beginning and, made friends immediately and was
Isn't
fine.
that a crazy? I mean, it makes all the difference in the world. I had, in fact, he was one of the second people I interviewed on the show. Romo was, he had worked himself down from a medium and had been a shot caller, the Texas homeboy. So it was, um, I would not have thought that he would have immediately. He was showing me how to make my bed military style. He helped me clean out my locker. He immediately introduced me to somebody that I found out went to my high school that was 8 years older than me. It's crazy, Tara. But all those things that I thought that I'm going to get, am I going to get raped first? Will I get beaten up first? Within the hour, I was like, oh, well, these guys are going to help me out. I,
Absolutely. I mean, people stop by my first 15 minutes and we're like, oh, you need a coffee, you're going to need a coffee mug, or you're going to need this, or you're going to need that. And, we'll get you an extra pillow. And I was like, this is amazing.
yeah,
People really do help you. And that's who you're going to rely on for getting through every day anyways. But they really do, like, here's a toothbrush, here's shower shoes, here's, like all the things that you need immediately. And it was just like I can't describe it any other way than a giving environment. People didn't know me. I hadn't even said hello, and they're just dropping stuff off.
that's what just blew my. And the shower shoes thing, by the way, is very big for those listening down the Cayman Islands. Shower shoes in prison are a must, and I didn't know that. I'd never even heard that you needed shower shoes. But my side bunkie said, "Cassity, I got an extra pair. You're going to need these." And I was like, "Oh, thanks." And little did I know, yeah, sure do.
Absolutely. They're critical.
Critical in the process. But I think for those listening though, or watching that, um, that might have been my biggest like surprise of anything with prison is within an hour, everybody was so helpful to me. And I guess it was too, and you and I talked about this, Tara, beforehand. Um, People were in a primitive environment, but they're living there. I mean, some are living there for years. And, as long as you're respectful and you try to get along with people, they'll try to get along with you. If you try to cause trouble for people, just like on the outside, then you'll have trouble on the inside. It's not that much different.
Absolutely.
It's just more primitive. It's more primitive. Nobody goes anywhere. Everybody's right there.
No, but it's true. It's, if anything, like, a pressure cooker of, you're kind of in a pressure cooker and that you can't walk away too far, right? There's only so far you can get away. But everyone, if you get along with people, they will get along with you. There's no need to, if you instigate something, well, you're going to face
Right.
consequences. But that's
Right.
true everywhere in life. So if you can just be a normal human being and treat people with decency and respect and use your common sense, you're going to
Yeah.
be
It's,
fine.
it's like one of the guys, that had gone to prison that I was talking to before. He said, well, you don't want to owe anybody money on gambling, and you don't get, if you get into drugs, and I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm not going to do any of that. It's not going to be something I'm going to do that on the outside. Um, so Tara, uh, you get it. What's your world like? So you get set up. People are nice to you. You
Yeah,
are in a world that you never thought you'd be in.
I mean, I was lucky. So I went in May, and so the outside, I think having access to the outside really saved me. And at Danbury, there was so much outside space where you could go walk on the track, you could be outside reading magazines and books. And I really think just for me, having that fresh air and sunshine and being there in good weather in the beginning really, really made a difference, you know, for me. I think if I had gone there in the winter, I would have maybe had a tougher time. Um, because you're locked inside in this, I mean, not locked, but you're inside in this small environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, like, I wanted a job right away. I was just like, keep busy. If I keep busy, I'll be I'll be fine. The time will go faster. So I worked first in the education department, and I worked in the regular library, the leisure library,
Hmm.
which was fine, but kind of boring. And so then I started teaching women, GED, and making sure that they got their GED and doing tutoring. And so that was rewarding.
I think that's a big tip too for those listening that are thinking that they're going into prison is try to stay plugged in to keep your mind active. You just shared three things there, Tara: being outside, exercising, reading, and having a good job. All those things I think are almost essential to keep you being you. You don't turn into prison Tara or prison Brent. You keep feeling like yourself. Um,
Absolutely.
I
I think it's
enjoyed my
important.
job being able to go to the food warehouse and, I'd learned things I'd never would ever learn in my whole life, learning how to drive a forklift. And I got pretty good at it too. I got actually pretty good at driving a forklift. Drove that
Well,
big truck with the food and I could back up
that's
with the
impressive.
mirrors. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I
I think
actually
that's a good tip though, Tara, what you said.
I think it's really important. Like, if you don't stay busy and you just let the time do you instead of you doing the time, I just think that you're going to have a much better, more positive outcome. And so I got bored, even it's boring. I will say that's one of the
It's
worst
boring.
things is the boardom.
Yeah.
So I joined the construction crew and learned construction. I can like set a toilet
Wow.
now and concrete, and I can paint, kind of.
Yeah.
But again, it's like trying new things, staying involved in classes. I took all the classes. I took regular yoga, chair yoga. I was like, just give me something to do.
Anything.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I read 80 books. I read 80 books. I read magazines all the time, and I learned. I of course had to learn to crochet because everybody has to learn to knit or crochet. I'm not. I didn't really make anything, but
You learned how to do it.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's again just using your mind in a different way and occupying your time as much as you can.
Which is probably a good tip for anybody, whether you're in prison or out. You're right.
Exactly.
Keep
Exactly.
engaged. Keep engaged. Otherwise, you'll go
Yeah.
stale. So when you start getting, and I'm like with your family and stuff, did you get visits? Was that kind of part of your routine too? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I definitely. My family came all the time. I had friends come, from states away. I was very lucky. I always had visitors. And that's one of the things I also noticed there when I was at Danbury is like some people never had visitors. Some people never got that interaction, and
Yeah.
that is something to be really thankful for and grateful for is that you have people that are in your corner that are willing to take the time to come visit you because that's not easy for people either. They've got to come and like subject themselves
Not
to
easy at
the
all.
conditions,
Yeah.
and like that they're willing to take those efforts and to support you is really
Means a lot.
it really does mean a lot.
Yeah. And you're so right about Tara. I think we had 430 people at Leavenworth and probably anywhere from 20 to 40 got visits. That's a small percentage of people that would have
Yeah.
people that would come and
I
see
mean,
them.
I think there were people that never had a visitor,
Right.
or
That's harder to
got
find, I think.
letters,
Yeah.
or got mail. I got mail almost every single day. People would make fun of me because like they're like, "Of course Tara has mail,"
Yeah.
but I would say to people like, "Send me books, send me the magazines," but like, I had like, a friend's dad that would send me 10 cards a week every single week that I was there. I think he
Wow.
like bought out Hallmark. So it really, but I have them all. I saved them and I sent them home because I think that is something that I look back on. It really means something to you, and those people that spent the time and effort supporting you is something that I'll never forget.
So a big time prosecuting attorney gets close to getting out, and then there's a feeling that happens about 3 or 4 months before that. What are you thinking as far as the whole reentry thing, getting back into the community and being the new Tara?
Yeah, I wasn't, I mean, I had a place to go, right? So I'm not in this, I wasn't in the same boat that a lot of people like have no idea where they're going to live. And that I can't imagine the stress of that because that's just a another level of stress. Um, but it is stressful because obviously I can't go back to what I did. My license was suspended from law. And so what are my next steps? I actually thought about,
Tara, I meant to ask you when all this happened. That legal community of yours is one that, like you said, that's colleagues. Did you have people that stayed with you on that journey that you went forward, or was it like you went alone and that whole world of yours is there and you were over here?
yeah, no, I mean, I was very lucky. I think I lost one friend. There were people, no one from the DA's office or the NYPD was allowed to really reach out to me because there was ongoing, the criminal case and then also a civil matter. And so
Right.
I couldn't have real contact with them. But I will say the defense bar in New York was so supportive of me. I got so many text messages and emails and phone calls just like, hey, we're thinking of you, checking in. I had no social media presence before that, so it wasn't like I could connect with people on, Facebook. And actually I'm thankful for that I
Yeah.
didn't let that run my life, social media, that it really was I talked to someone, or emailed with them or saw them in person. Um, and then all my friends that had left the DA's office prior to me leaving there were also very supportive. I mean, I had one person that was like, I never talked to again. But other than that, I still have all the same friends that I did beforehand. And same with my family. Like they were very, very supportive.
That's a big deal. I mean,
It's a
it's,
huge deal.
yeah, it is. So you have this, as we all do when we get close to the door, getting out. What are you thinking? Like what's or did you have a plan of what you thought you were going to do?
I would say I had a couple plans, right? I knew I wanted to do Liberty Advisors. I had actually called my family. They had registered the name with the state already, and I put my dad and my names on it so that I could hold the name with the state.
Which I
So
like that name, by the way.
thank you.
It's a great name.
I thought about it for 9 months. But like while you're there, what else are you gonna do? So I started making this plan. Like, what do I want to do? I don't want to send someone to the wrong, to have them end up in West Virginia. Like that was going back to,
Yeah.
and how could I have helped my family and friends? Like, even though they know about the criminal justice system, no one knew it like I knew it. So
Right.
they know what they see on like Law and Order or something
Hmm.
else on TV. And so I really wanted to help the women that I was there with. For instance, I helped them while I was there. I helped them and their families reconnect. I would help people when they got out. Right after I got out, I had two of my friends get out within 4 months after I got out. But I didn't have post release supervision. So I didn't have any restrictions on me. I could help people right away. Like, okay, where you're going to go? How is it at the halfway house? Like, make sure you're going to get, check off these boxes. Because again, I could use what I knew from my prior life as a prosecutor and as the system, and to help people. And I do think that gave me purpose right when I got out.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't know if it would really stick or not. I also thought maybe I'd be a dog trainer. I love dogs.
I do too. Love
And so I
dogs.
was like, well, let's see. I love hanging out with dogs.
They
Maybe I
actually
just want
had
to be a
dog
dog trainer.
training after I left Leavenworth. I don't know if it's still going on, but they actually brought that into the prison about 6 months after I left. And I don't know if it's still going on, but I know that in certain prisons there is dog training.
Me too. And I was hoping they would have that at Danbury, but they didn't. They did
Yeah.
have it years before I got there, but they didn't have it. But I do think that's such a worthwhile program.
It's good for
I
both sides. It's a
exactly,
total win
exactly,
for everybody.
absolutely.
You were saying, Tara, before we got on or hit the record button, you were talking about that you really kind of assumed that they just thought you were an attorney, but uh, the OGs pulled you aside on the last day you were there when everybody's saying goodbye and whatever this, and they they said, "Hey, we
Yeah,
know
exactly. Oh, by the way, we knew. I'm like, oh my God,
the whole time."
really? Yeah. And that's the thing. Like they knew. They let me put on the farce that I was just an attorney, but they were
Yeah,
like, you were very nice and you helped everyone and you helped when you could. And I actually ran a mock trial class with another former attorney in there, and we had a federal judge come, and she went through the mock trial and rated everyone and gave feedback, and it was pretty
Wait,
amazing.
wait, 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 wait. You had a federal judge come into the prison
Hmm.
and you had a mock trial in the
Yep.
prison? Wow,
Yep.
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was really crazy. And it was another woman that I was there with, was brilliant, and she had got, she was like, I think this is a great idea. She had been working on it, trying to get the pieces together long before I got there. And so she's like, would you be willing to take one side? And I was like, sure. So like she coached one side and I coached the other. And it was just, it's just another thing, right? That I have experience in this. Let's do it. It's interesting and it helps me do my time and fill it up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I mean, yeah, everybody knew.
What do you think, Tara, after you got out? Because you had place to go and you had kind of a plan. What do you think was the toughest thing about reentry?
I think really starting over, like getting a business up and running and making money. I had that pressure of like, how am I going to make money doing this? And like, where does that come from? And how long is it going to take? And it's not even the 3 to 5 year plan. It was like the day to day of that. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God, really now have to start over and make money, And so I think that to me was stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it is because I mean you're starting over. For many of us that had careers, you're basically back to where you were getting out of college and saying, okay, but now, you're older, so you just got to figure it out, which you
Right.
have, which and Liberty Advisors has been going on. I think how many years now? Two and a half
Well,
years or
yeah,
5 years?
about two. Yeah. I mean, I registered the company right when I got out, but then
Right.
between COVID and I didn't really know anything. So I had to educate myself on running
Yeah.
a business and building a website and all that stuff. So I really have been going about 2 years now.
Which is great. And I think that, for those, and there's so many people that almost everybody has no idea what and how this all unfolds when, especially I think there's a lot of different things that from the state level and that's where most people are indicted, but on the federal level, there's a whole nother world. And the fact that you can walk people through both because you have the state experience of being a prosecutor and how that world works, and then you actually entered the federal system as the United States of America versus terror, which is always very, very intimidating to anybody who sees that on a piece of paper. What do you think's your biggest takeaway through all of it?
Well, for me personally, my biggest takeaway is ask for help, right? If you're in this type of situation, it's lean on people. Don't think you can take it all on yourself. But that's my personal case. I think another big takeaway is the federal system is, to me, so extreme compared to the state, and depending on, I guess, where you are, because that also, it's regional, it's state based, because in Connecticut versus New York, the same crime might be a different amount of time. But when you're facing federal charges, just the overwhelmingness of the federal government and trying to minimize that feeling, to me, is really important. And that's why I really like to help people, is because just knowing some of it can take away some of the stress. The more that
Absolutely.
the more knowledge you have and the more preparation you have can reduce that stress level. It's not going away, don't
No,
get me
no,
wrong, but
no.
but
But I always like to say nothing as bad as your mind makes it out to be. The
right,
unknown is the real fear. Once you even get bad news on this stuff, you can at least start dealing with it. And I
right.
think
Each
that's the thing, Tara, that you can provide people is the unknown. You can kind of knock it down. You can kind of
and
bring it.
also just having someone there, like,
Yeah.
so I go to a lot of my clients' guilty pleas and sentencings, and sit with them and just talk to them and just have someone that they can reach out to, so they're not burdening their family, or their family can ask me questions, so they're not stressing out the person, that's facing the federal charges. they can call me and say like, hey, what's this going to be like? All right, we're going to do this, and then we're going to take these steps. And honestly, just giving them steps to follow
Yep.
helps them, you know,
Yep.
in my
It's almost like you're
experience.
checking off boxes and it makes you feel better. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think in that way I can help alleviate stress for both the person going through it, but also their loved ones, because they have a person that's safe to call. That person, you know, I can answer the calls. I can't give you legal advice, but I can give you all the emotional and support and guidance and knowledge of the system.
Yeah. For people to get a hold of you, Tara, you want to give out your website's Liberty Advisors. Is it LLC or just Liberty Advisors?
LLC.
Liberty Advisors LLC. And then you want to give out your
My
email?
email?
Yeah.
Yes, it's Tara, Tara, at libertyadvisorsllc.com.
Reach out to her. She can help. Speaking of gratitude stuff, I want to thank Homestead Financial Home Mortgage that lets me use all this fancy equipment in here that I really don't know how to use, but I appreciate it. And if you need home mortgage out there, Greg Aftiev is your guy. He knows all about all that stuff. If you're looking for a book, I've got one. It's Nightmare Success. You can get it at Amazon, Barnes and Noble. If you got time, please leave a review on Apple or anywhere. Love it. If you want to know more about me, BrentCassity.com. I spell it wrong. I spell it with a TY, not a DY. And as I used to say to my people, I was writing my emails back and forth from Leavenworth. Stay strong. I'll do the same. Tara, thanks so much for sharing your story. Appreciate it. Lots of nuggets of wisdom there.
Thank you so much for having me.
Nightmare Success, in and out.